Oh, I didn't take.
Why didn't you take mine?
That captured his. Michael took.
All right,
This gonna be it,
this is it.
Bradley?
Well, I haven't heard from Bradley. I know that Wayne is out of town. But let me start the meeting, call the meeting to order. We have an agenda and we first have an interesting part, which I will hand over to our secretary.
So this is the annual organization meeting that all boards and committees do. We're first going to do a nomination for a chair. And then we'll do a first and second and motion on that, then vice chair. And then we'll look at the meeting schedule, which is I believe the second page in your packet to adopt that. So this is just something we'll do every January. And with the microphones today, if you keep them close enough to you, or if you're leaning forward just to make sure that we record, they're a little sensitive with that. So are there any nominations for the chair?
I nominate Bert Limkus.
Second.
All right, and vote.
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
of course, it's, I mean,
Can I take it back over then?
You take it back over.
Any nominations for vice chair?
I think David's done a good job.
I'll second.
All in favor of that motion? Aye. Mr. Schaffer, congratulations.
It's been a heck of a run.
Yeah.
Did you hear?
All right.
Here we go again, Bert.
Next, meeting schedule, everybody got that? It's the same concept, every, what is it?
It's the third.
Third Friday of the month at 9 AM. Unless something else pops up.
And I will say too, Mr. Chairman, along those lines, I appreciate y'all communicating well in advance, reminding us of the scheduled meetings. That's awesome. Thank you. And then when you do a cancellation, it's in time. I appreciate the way you're communicating that.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
Thank you.
same very much. All right, motion to approve the schedule.
So move.
All in favor?
I'll second. Okay.
Next, approval of the minutes. We had, last meeting, October 17th, regular meeting, and would like to entertain a motion to approve
And you can do both at.
both at the same time. Approve all the minutes.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Public comment. Should
No
I,
one has signed up.
okay. Should I put the letter from Wayne in public comment or?
We'll do that under your discussion with the bad rezoning, since it was his
Okay.
contribution.
All right, no public comment, old business.
So today, I've written up a staff report just because this was a little complicated compared to what we usually do. So on January 28th, we had the joint public hearing with the Henderson County Agriculture Advisory pertaining to the voluntary agriculture district within the municipal boundaries of the town of Mills River in regards to the UDO and townwide rezoning. The Planning and Zoning Department has today created a presentation. I've printed out some of it for you because it's hard to do a bad overlay with the zoning map and everything. So we can look at it parcel by parcel with questions to go through that. And then I've attached also in here at the very end, the last page is going to be the Henderson County Agriculture District recommendation, if you want to take that into consideration. But all information about the UDO and the rezoning process is on www.imaginemillsriver.com. This is, we did the public hearing as a reminder because it was a new state law for any bad land being rezoned. This is a little bit of a unique situation because this is not a finite piece of time. There's still going to be input and consideration for the rezoning throughout the whole spring. And in fact, the town has been and will continue to solicit public input on proposed ordinances and zoning, and the next public meeting is March 10th at Mills River Elementary School from 6:30 PM to 8:30 PM. But I'll turn the discussion over to you. And we can go through the slides, as you would like.
Why don't you go through the slides first?
Okay. Four. Okay.
That's the same as behind us, right?
Right.
Okay.
So this is the entire district, as Mike had talked about at the last meeting. Anything in the red is that MRMU, mixed use, and where you can do anything. And then you can see the others based on the map. This is the proposed rezoning, and you can see the map, which is also why I printed it out for you, because it's a little hard to read. Flip to that page, 'cause I can't read that one. And then this is the overlay district of the map with the watershed. And then the next slides will go into each individual property. Just so you can see what the difference is, but most of it's going to be the rural preservation district.
Just me.
Hmm.
Just me. What are we looking at?
We're looking at all the voluntary ag district properties within the town of Mills River.
Mhm.
And just, what you have in front of you and what's going on the screen right now is basically showing the current zoning
Currency.
and the proposed new zoning, but the whole UDO is still in process. So there's no really final determination what that zoning exactly is gonna mean. That's still in process. And there is what, 36 properties or something?
Something like that.
Yeah. And the reason that we are looking at this is that we had that public hearing whereby we had no input from the public. Part of, I think, is because landowners are either on this committee or that aren't in the voluntary ag district. A few are. And they didn't speak. That makes sense? So it's not specifically the public input that we have to discuss, and I don't know what we have to discuss on this.
This,
From the state
Okay.
legislature, right?
you held the public hearing. That was all that was required.
Okay,
You can make a recommendation. You don't have to make a recommendation. This is just giving you the option in the procedural process. As Mr. Lemke said, this is still very much in process. He's actually part of the steering committee for this, so he's been reading lots and lots of code and looking at things. And this is what's just trying to bring the town into more order. We, if you hadn't heard, we're the only municipality in the state who was given an exemption till the end of this fiscal year at the end of June to do downzoning. The state took that away. So if we're ever going to change the zoning, from anything like with the mixed use, this is our chance. You can always open it up, but you can't limit it at that point. And there are going to be chances for property owners to appeal and say, you know what, you guys did this, but this doesn't fit my property, and come back and do that. So this is a very interactive process with the public. So if you have a recommendation today, great. If not, there's still going to be plenty of time for input.
Any input from committee members? We also, for the record, the town asked the Henderson County Ag Advisory Board, which decides for the county, including the town of Mills River, if a property is appropriate to be in voluntary ag district, or whatever the other term is, the EVAT. They decide on that. And the town also, by North Carolina law, had to ask that board for a public hearing. So that's why we did the public hearing together for the Mills River Ag Advisory Committee and the Henderson County Ag Advisory Board. They had their follow-up meeting this past Wednesday, and gave a recommendation to, I guess, town council. I don't know where that recommendation goes from the
I believe it just goes to the planning department.
planning. Okay. That, well, let me ask, Mr. Davis, who is part of that Ag Advisory Board for Henderson County. We got I think everybody has a copy of this recommendation. If you want to explain on that.
So Henderson County Ag Advisory spent a lot of time on this, looking at this and comparing what's going on in the county overall. Everybody agrees 100% that there's such a need to preserve farmland that we have left in Henderson County. There's a lot that everyone's concerned about. In fact, it's been a week of meetings for me, and this has been a topic in just about every meeting I've been in. So I'm looking on farmland preservation overload, I guess so to say. And I'll just share my thoughts. And I think this statement is signed by our chairman, Kenny Barnwell, and represents, drafted by the County Advisory Board. I hope everyone has a copy of that. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but please look at that. And I think it was meant to be a recommendation to not only this advisory board, but to the to Mills River's planning as well. I think that's going to be, it's the unified statement across the county. And I tried to figure out how I wanted to explain this and how a lot of us feel. Farmers in Henderson County are in different situations. You have some farm families that have worked for generations, and they've worked hard and their land is their 401k, their land is their legacy. And, it's up to those families to work through that. And I'm in a situation where I'm a first generation farmer. And my second generation is 2015 and 12. They are wanting to continue farming and continue in agriculture. And, my goal is not to develop, not to sell land. In fact, I'm trying to find some land that we can afford to purchase, be honest. And I also have a lot of respect for these families that have been in this community for generation upon generation. And their families are choosing to go a different route, whether it be residential development, commercial development. So it's a really touchy situation. And, my heart goes out to them. To me, I'm a private property. I believe in private property rights, and I believe what John Doe and Jane Doe do with the property that they own should be their decision. I have a hard time for Jason Davis walking up to them and saying, "Hey, I'm a farmer. You shouldn't sell your land." Basically, another way to put this is, you're taking somebody's checkbook or somebody's investment or someone's 401k and you're cutting it in half. That's just an example. So, there's a lot of mixed opinions on this, but, and the Town of Mills River statement, I've read it and thought and slept on it a lot. That this is an attempt to preserve open space. This is an attempt to preserve farmland in Mills River. When you get to looking at what data is out there, and and I'll raise my hand. I've always been against high density housing, but if you look at the facts and the studies, there's a lot of information out there across the state today that say that urban sprawl is the biggest threat to open space and farmland. And we studied this at the county planning board level. And I really had to really get a grasp on this because I've always been against high density housing. But, you identify those areas where you've got the infrastructure and the utilities. You identify those areas where the traffic and all those concerns can handle, where it's the infrastructure's in place. And that's where you really increase your housing. That's where you really increase your development. And then you leave open space and you leave farmland. So, one of the things that we learned in that process was that when you do go to restricting, for instance, 3 acre lots, 4 acre lots, whatever they might be, you're getting kind of contradicting that. Now, I know I've said a lot to try to explain. I'm just talking about what we spent a lot of time discussing this week, and how the Henderson County Ag Advisory Board came to this recommendation, and this is the recommendation not only for Mills River but really for the county as well. So, with that, Mr. Chairman, did I answer your question?
Yeah.
No, I
Yes.
chased some rabbits there.
No,
I'm trying to.
there's a lot of
emphasize,
rabbits,
There's a lot of rabbits there. And, I've been getting questions, and I've asked some of, I respect our town council. I love each and every one of them. They're good friends of mine, all of them. And, I've asked, we've been looking at this from a voluntary ag district standpoint most recently. And I'm thinking, well, how does what you're doing with the UDO, how is that going to affect my land being in voluntary ag district? And so what's the difference in how it's zoned now and how it's going to be zoned in rural preservations? How does that affect my voluntary ag district? And we put our land in voluntary ag district to protect, to inform our neighbors, inform the public that there's agricultural operations going on. It protects us against nuisance complaints. It is designed to preserve agricultural land, correct? We're all in agreement. when I ask those questions, they look at me and I don't know. So, and I've gotten that from a lot of people. So if I was going to generate a question to be discussed today, is explain to us how this is going to affect our land in the voluntary ag district. I would want some answers. How many of you like to know that? Several up here. So if there's anyone here that would like to speak to that, address that, that has been a common question that has come up in every meeting that I've been in. Everybody's like, well, I don't know. Who knows?
Well,
It needs some further explanation, Mr. Chairman. Do you agree?
yes, I do. I think that the most important issue is that the town of Mills River has had an exemption for agriculture. And we've defined that a little bit more concise as bona fide agriculture, and there's certain conditions, what is considered bona fide agriculture. No problem. I mean, I think that's good to define that. Want to make sure that with the UDO, that we do not all of a sudden add restrictions or permit requirements. I know there's been discussion within the whole UDO review about possible permit requirements for agriculture. I am making a very strong point against that because I don't want to hinder in any possible way agriculture, even though it is a no cost permit and no condition permit. It just adds more requirements that don't help agriculture and definitely do not support the goal of the town to preserve agriculture and agriculture activities. And that is also in the recommendation from the Henderson County Ag Advisory Board to maintain that agriculture status exemption from rules and regulations. When it comes to our advisory board, I agree with what you're saying about those farmers that want to sell land and have private property rights. But I think what we gotta look at primarily is how to continue agriculture. Everybody may come to a point that they want to or have to sell. But obviously what would be the nicest that we could see within our town limits, within our country, for agriculture to stay healthy and continue so we can stay healthy. Now, you've made some really good points, and I would like to give our other two members at the table here if they want to add
Real,
anything.
really good points by both Bert and Jason. Still educating myself a lot on this. You got to look within and see if it affects your own industry and business, and then obviously look out for the well-being of those surrounding us. I always revert back to our first bylaw of Mills River. Other than that, I don't have much more.
Mike?
Really have much of it. We all recognize what our problem is here. If we can address it, something like land conservancies buying out where we can subsidize the people. That's, I don't know.
Well, let me add to our comments. Wayne was not able to be here today, and he gave me a letter that I will read into the record. So we're all on understanding where he's from. One of the town goals for the creation of the Unified Development Ordinance, preserving farms and agriculture activity. As a result, a new zoning district called Rural Preservation. Our PV is proposed for a large portion of the town, including 85% of our family farm. Rural preservation will be imposed on not only our cropland in the floodplain, but on our pastures, hay fields, and timberland. This is despite our request that an alternative land use district during one-to-one meeting with town staff and their consultant. As a five generation family-owned farm in the Mills River Valley, we know the challenge of operating a viable agriculture operation. The most crucial aspect of sustainable farm is diversification, not only in crops and livestock, but diversity in income streams. 30 years ago, we made a decision to sell 50 acres of pasture on our farm for development. The land was subdivided into 18 residential lots, approximately 2 to 3 acres each. Proceeds from this land sale allowed the family farm to remain viable. While we made provisions for future phases of the subdivision, our family has not had to sell additional land to sustain farming operation. However, the ability to sell a portion of the farm is critical for mitigating risk from market volatility, crop losses, and natural disasters. Simply designating undeveloped lands in Mills River as RPV with its minimum lot size over 3 acres strips farmers of a vital income stream and puts agriculture at risk. The best way to preserve agriculture in Mills River is to allow farmers to make the best decisions for their operation and their land, which represent an entire life savings that provide financial security for the farm. Signed by Mr. Wayne Carlin. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I want to take just another moment to elaborate on kind of what you touched on, what Mr. Schaefer just touched on as well. And ag exemption and that first ordinance of the town. I wish I could quote it word for word, but it goes something like, says something, and maybe someone's got that here. We can read it word for
We
word.
need to have it on the wall, you know.
We need to have it on the wall. I agree with that, Mr. Schaefer. That's a good
We
thing.
need
It needs to be
direct-
on that wall, on all these walls, all 4 walls, but that the town of Mills River would not implement restrictions, ordinances, laws that would surpass what we already face at the state level and the federal level. And I want people that are listening today to know that farmers are regulated. Mr. Corner, you regulated?
Somewhat, yeah.
Mr. Schaefer, you regulated by the state and federal? Yes, we are. And, I just want Mills River to know that if you want farmers to continue farming in this community, first and foremost, and people miss this, I think, sometimes. The biggest component to farmland preservation is you got to preserve the farmer. I agree with that. What does that mean? It means that farmers have to be profitable. They have to be able to provide for their families, just like you and whatever your career would be. You've got to be able to make a profit. You've got to be able to provide for your family. You've got to be able to pay your bills. We've got to be able to pay our bills and to be sustainable. So that is a huge thing that in this ordinance, I've asked individual council members and town staff to please focus on that and think about that and sleep on that. And I like what Mr. Schaefer said, put it on the walls. If we want Mills River to continue to be a farming community, we've got to protect that ordinance. We've got to protect our farmers. We've got to protect them from further regulation. We've got to protect them from further nuisance complaints. We've got to not get in front of or get behind. I say stand together side by side. There's value in that. Work together. So
What does makes most sense that we do with our input to town council, really, when it comes to this UDO. We will have more discussions later on. We got another meeting lined up already whereby we will have the actual draft version of this development ordinance that we can look at and, you know, think that will be a very good discussion. I don't want to get into that right now, but maybe it would be good to reiterate again our request to maintain the bona fide agriculture exemption within all regulations and requirements of the town ordinances. Just as simple as possible. And prevent a slow introduction of certain regulations or certain restrictions that just make it more difficult for agriculture to continue to be healthy and profitable within the town of Millsburg. Is that something that I get some?
I'm with you, Bert.
Well, they've got my farm written here as one of the things. It's going from a residential to a rural preservation district. What is that gonna do to me? It's on the map right here.
Mhm.
62 Valley View Road.
The question is, you know, you're residential right now, but you're a farm,
Right.
right? If agriculture, bona fide agriculture is exempt, it really shouldn't make any difference. Only for what you want to do with your land. If you're not farming.
So the decision would be his.
And what I understand also in the UDO process, you can request a different allocation or whatever the term is. Go ahead.
Moving gentlemen, Ben McCarry, Town of Mill River, Town Manager. Sorry for my voice. So just a couple of things to clarify. So yes, Mr. Corn, as you mentioned, you and anyone else, if you have questions about what the proposed zoning, draft zoning looks like, you can come and contact staff. We're happy to sit down with you, talk with you about what your current zoning is and what proposed zoning is, what additions may be there, what potential changes may be there, then have that conversation. And then if you feel that you would like to change to a different type of zoning district, then we will take that into consideration, pass it on to the consultants. So that's for you, that's for anyone within the town of Mills River to have that conversation. The other thing, excuse me, the other thing I want to mention is around the voluntary ag district. So to the best of my understanding, the voluntary ag district is around these properties, doesn't change based off of the zoning designation that is put forward today. It's solely about the property, but excuse me, what you all plan to do with that property once that is no longer being used for agricultural purposes. So again, the state of North Carolina requires that if there's going to be any rezoning of bad properties, that there has to be a public hearing to do so. And if it's my understanding is correct, that today's conversation is around solely the those bad properties and whether or not there is a recommendation for the public hearing to move forward to council about those bad properties. So from my understanding, if you're in the bad program now, you would be in the bad program moving forward through this UDO process. Because the rezoning is solely about what happens once it's over. Also, this advisory board, as well as the council themselves, have been very clear with the direction to continue to move forward with agricultural exemptions, to especially around bona fide farms, to ensure that bona fide farms can continue to work and operate within the town of Mills River. So that's, you should see that within the draft proposal that's going to be coming forward in March. Don't hold me to the date, around March 15th or so. That's when the consolidated draft comes together. But we've heard loud and clear that agricultural exemption, because of especially specifically around bona fide farms, and we've been talking about definitions of how that falls in. And council's even given us direction to expand that a little bit on the definitions as well, to continue to protect our current farmer, to continue to try to bring forward the next generation of farmers at the town of Mills River, because agriculture is, again, our history, and we want to make sure that we continue to nurture that and cultivate that for the future. So with that being said, I'm happy to answer any other general questions, but I just thought that may be helpful a little bit for this conversation and for those listening at home, even though you have to listen to it sound like this right now.
Is that a commitment to get a nice wooden frame and put that ordinance on the wall so that everybody that comes in and out of this room can see it?
That is outside of my pay grade, but you're more than welcome to pass it on to our council members.
I appreciate you speaking to us, and I appreciate you. I know you're not feeling well, but I appreciate you having the commitment to be here for us today, and answer our questions. And I appreciate you speaking to Voluntary Ag District. And you're correct. Voluntary Ag District means that land is actively being farmed. There is farming production going on that land. And what I'm understanding, you're asking this advisory board to make a recommendation specifically concerning those voluntary ag districts.
The state of North Carolina is required for the public hearing specifically on the ag potential rezone. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So right now that would be if this advisory board wishes to provide a recommendation around those districts and the potential rezoning, that would be one recommendation. If there's further conversation about overall UDO, overall rezoning, et cetera, I would recommend that be a separate piece of a separate conversation, just to keep it clean for our purposes moving forward.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
What is the definition of a bona fide farm?
I don't have the bona fide farm definition in front of me right now. I'm happy to give it to you, to get it to you, the entire ag advisory board. Bert may be able to say it off the top of his head right now. We've talked about it quite a bit, but I don't want to misspeak.
Well, it's either land in voluntary ag district or present use value or tax exempt status of your farming operation. There's 5 or 6, and we can get that to you.
FSA serial number,
Requirements.
FSA serial number.
Yeah, say,
There's also I think council, again, not being a farmer, please excuse me for that, but there's also, I think council also directed us to provide even more flexibility. There's a certain kind of map option as well that farmers could be mapped on. Is that? That's FSA. Okay, just wanted to make sure. So yeah, so we've been trying to expand that based off of council's direction to make sure that those that are doing agricultural farm, bona fide farms can continue to do their work. But we can make sure we get it to you.
The definition is pretty extensive. Might be good to get that out.
Absolutely.
it will be part of that whole UDO draft that we will get later on also.
And just as a reminder, I believe March 12th is the council meeting. March 10th, that Tuesday night at Mills River Elementary School. I believe it's going to be at 6:30 again. Will be the large public forum again for the entire community to come out and hear more about the changes that have happened to the draft. Be able to see the comprehensive draft moving forward. So I highly recommend yourselves, anyone and everyone listening right now, to come out and speak their opinions about that draft.
Thank you. Any other questions for our town manager?
I'll be sitting in the back.
Thank you.
Specifically to the voluntary ag districts, that land is being actively farmed. That land is in production. Leave it alone.
maintain the agriculture exemption
Exemption.
to the fullest extent possible of regulations and permit requirements and whatever else.
Yes.
Because that's where I'm most concerned.
May I ask a clarification point? And the public hearing was very specifically about the rezoning of it, not just about the exemptions or other ordinances that could come into place. So if you have a recommendation about the zoning piece too, it would be good to clarify that.
Make sure that it well, the zoning of, okay, this is just my interpretation. The zoning of voluntary ag district, it doesn't matter because you are exempt. Period.
Mhm.
Make sure that whatever comes in that zoning, that there are no restrictions hidden somewhere for agriculture. If it is a voluntary ag district, it goes to the whatever it's the terminology. I can't. The RPV. Make sure that that stays the least restrictive zoning for agriculture, but really, and I'm just thinking at the same time, it should not matter what the zoning is, because agriculture is exempt. Go ahead.
Sorry, just one final point. This may help with some confusion. So again, we're doing this because the state of North Carolina set a law in place that requires this. So in many other communities around the state of North Carolina, if you're changing a zoning district that may be eligible for the VAD, and then it changes to a different type of zoning district, where now it may not be agriculturally viable anymore as a zoning option, then the state basically said you have to have a public hearing. It has to go through this process because they don't want that land to just move from an agricultural use to a non-agricultural use. The town of Mills River is unique in many ways, and one of the unique ways is that we're continuing to move forward with agricultural use by bona fide farms are exempt, right? And so for that purpose, to Mr. Lipke's point, is that there's not necessarily any changes that are necessarily going to happen in the town of Mills River. If you're farming on that property now, you're farming on that property if this rezoning goes forward. There's no effect on the VAD, to my understanding. It's only, again, once you do with that property, once you're no longer farming on it. So it's kind of that unique situation where many other communities, there may be changes that would happen, that would need to trigger this public hearing. For this, if the bona fide farm exemption continues moving forward, then the actual work day to day isn't going to change. It's only the after effect of the farming on that property.
Thank you. As long as, therefore, we maintain that exemption for agriculture. And I see in the current UDO draft that there are little restrictions creeping in. And I want to make sure that we keep those out.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to, again, to publicly thank town manager and staff, several members of council for being here today. I know I've made that request when we have these important meetings. It would be nice to get questions answered. Thank you for answering our questions.
Yep.
And I agree with Mr. Lemkus. Those little restrictions that are sneaking in, we could get those, as Barney Fife would say, nip it in the bud. Get them out. Get them out. And I would love, and again, I'm going to challenge council again. I've done this every meeting for the last. Please give that first ordinance of the town of Mills River a vote of confidence. Vote of confidence.
You want to make a motion to have it mounted and clearly displayed in town
Yeah,
hall?
I seconded Mr. Shaver's motion. That's exactly right.
All in favor of that motion?
Uh,
Aye. What else? On the present use value properties, sorry, voluntary ag district properties, not mixing.
I got more questions that you got answers for, I think. And I don't even.
Do we have a motion, or can you come up with what we've said so far into a simple motion recommendation to town council, because that's where the request from the results from the Henderson County Board went to town council, if I read it right.
So what I'm understanding is that when it comes to VAD parcels, you want to make sure it has the least restrictive zoning and that agriculture exemptions are maintained. Is that succinct? or
Fullest
to
extent.
the fullest extent?
Yep.
So basically, no further than what the state and federal already place upon us.
Yep.
Further define that.
Repeat that, Jason.
She can read it back.
Okay. So we want to, on VAD parcels, and this is not fully refined, on VAD parcels, to keep the least restrictive zoning and to maintain ag exemptions to the fullest extent other than the federal and state requirements. And I'll wordsmith that, but those are the basic points. Is that correct?
Read it one more time, please.
For the VAD parcels, keep the least restrictive zoning and maintain ag exemptions to the fullest extent other than the federal and state requirements,
Not to exceed,
not to exceed.
please.
Do we, this is just, do we want to talk about actual zoning? Does it matter? As long as we have the agriculture exemption, you may want a property that you would like to develop in mixed use, not in the least restrictive zoning. Future, it's different zoning.
That, I wish he would have heard that question. Cause it sounded to me like a zoning could be changed or refined at a later date.
Yeah.
Can you say that again so the town manager can hear that?
Do we need to bring up zoning in our motion? Because it may be the landowner's desire to have a different zoning, not the RPV, but mixed use or whatever. As long as agriculture is exempt, you can continue to use your voluntary ag district for agriculture purposes without restrictions, because the town will not restrict bona fide agriculture, regardless of the zone. Is that, am I missing something?
So I dare not get our council decision, and again, right now, we're dealing with a draft UDF. I think that if there is a recommendation from this council, from this board around saying specifically around rezoning of bad districts, that if there's some language in there you'd like to have saying to continue working with those property owners to ensure that, you know, they can have their voice heard around a potential rezoning, as well as that you all recommend that that agriculture, bona fide farm exemptions continue to exist on bad properties moving forward, even after any rezoning. I think it's something that you could put into a draft motion. Does that make sense, Kristen? Because that's what I'm hearing, is that you all are trying to say that we want to, that you all want to make sure that bona fide farm exemptions continue to exist on bad properties, bad qualified properties, regardless of what rezoning may occur on those properties through this process. Is that correct?
Because the rezoning, I mean, as an example, Mike, you're in a residential right now?
Right. Proposed soon to be a RPP.
What we could do with Mr. Corn and with anyone else is what we do is we'll sit back and we'll show what the current use options are and then what the proposed use options are on that property. There are, on every property, what has occurred is that there is a mechanism, there's essentially, a set of rules that the consultant has used to try to use to go from one zoning, at the current zoning designation to another one, to a proposed use. In many cases, what they try to do is to say, what's the most like of the current one to the new one, right? So that's one of the first ones they do. And then there are these other metrics saying, okay, what are, what's nearby, what's adjoining that property, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So then there's refinement from that. So like I said, for yourself, sir, and anyone else, we will sit down, we will have that conversation. And, we've had it many times where somebody says, I disagree with this. I think it needs to be this for X, Y, and Z reasons. And we say, okay, let's talk through that. And then we'll pass it along to the consultant to consider as well. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the council is the one that chooses. The one thing that council has given us direction on at the beginning is, as Kristen mentioned, is that the state has given us a reprieve of the downzoning provision, which means we can always upzone after June 30th. But we will no longer be able to downzone, right, after June 30th. And so for that reason, the goal has been to, as much as possible, to try to keep like for like, and then in other places, let's say like, I guess, MU, the mixed use residential section is going away, then trying to find appropriate new zoning designations for that. The afterwards, council has given us direction to say that there's going to be a period afterwards, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, council gets to decide that, or somebody can come in and say, hey, you all zoned us incorrectly, and here's the reason why. And then with no fee, that's the recommendation right now, no fee for any type of rezoning application. Then council can consider that afterwards and say, okay, yeah, you know what? We understand, council understands why you may or may not want to change that. And so they'll be the ultimate deciders at that point. The one thing we're trying to be careful of is to not upzone properties during this process, right? So if you have, right now, if you have something that has, one for every 3 lots, like one house for every, 3 acres, to go from then to one house to every, 3/4 of an acre, that's an upzoning, right? And we know that we could do that through our normal zoning process, right? And I know I'm talking a lot here, but I just think it's helpful for those to know. Right now, for rezoning applications, their council, it goes before council. Right now, what we're showing right now is really going through a consultant and staff, right? And be completely honest, that's not the most transparent way to do it, right? So for that reason, we are doing it in a way to try to say, what's the most like for like? And then from that process, council ultimately at the end of the day says, well, we agree or we disagree. And then if there's any rezoning that comes after that because a resident disagrees, a property owner disagrees, they will go through that normal, transparent, process in front of council like any other time. Like right now, if you want to rezone a property, you would have to come do a rezoning application, come before council. That's the same exact process afterwards. There just won't be a fee. And we know that, there's going to be some adjustments after. Hopefully that makes sense. I just want to, we're trying our best to not get into a position where we're trying to zone something so far out of the norm one way, upzone too far out the other way without having a transparent arm, which is the council, the representatives, the elected representatives having a say in that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Would you mind reading back the motion?
So bona fide farm exemptions continue to exist regardless of rezoning for bad properties.
So zoning on the parcel will be maintained not to exceed the minimum state and federal requirements for ag exemption. Again, these are my notes. I'll wordsmith it.
Motion. Second,
Second.
all in favor? Aye.
Michael.
Yeah. Very good. And I think that's basically
And we're good for it.
what we discussed about the voluntary ag districts. Hearing, public hearing.
Yes.
Yep,
And then our next meeting will be more about
the
the next
UDO
process with the
detail.
UDO and the
Yep.
rezoning and what have you.
Okay, new business on our agenda. Well, right now Wayne Carland is representing our advisory committee on the Mills River Partnership Board. I did ask Wayne if he was willing to serve again, and he was positive about that. So. Motion,
For Wayne?
Yep.
I so move.
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Very good, then Mr. Wayne Cardinal will continue to represent our advisory committee on the Mills River Partnership Board.
I want to say that I appreciate Mills River Partnership. They, Maria and Mr. Duncan are really working hard to get out on the farms. And they've really been a friend to agriculture. They're doing a lot of good things. I appreciate that diverse group. Board members around the table, and they're doing some really good things in the community of Mills River. So I just encourage people to really support them, get to know them, and stand back and look at some of the good work that
Thank you. I am part of that group also, and I hope that with the coming budget session that we can also ask for the town of Mills River to continue to support the Mills River Partnership as they're taking care of the watershed in Mills River, not just the Mills River watershed, but also Boylston Creek, which is outside of the normal drinking water inlets for Hendersonville. But that will be something that we'll bring up later.
Hmm.
Anything else?
We've got a couple folks here in a few more minutes. Was there any time for open questions to some folks that may want to speak?
Anybody? We got 2 minutes left. Any input? If none, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.